Hey everybody, how you doing? Let's talk about the full moon in Leo coming up in a few days' time. There's so much to talk about. I don't actually know where to begin. I've been going over it in my head this morning. There's just so much to look at, and really, perhaps I want to start with what's happening at the moment with the Sun, Pluto, and Mars. This energy has been in play for quite a few days already, and it is a very intense energy. The thing to remember about Mars is that it's basically a malefic planet. So because of its malefic nature, it's very it's got a lot of heat to it. Now, I'll give you an example. I'm not going to go into the whole shenanigans about it. But I went to an event on Saturday, a festival, a dance festival, to actually see one of my favorite DJs. I'll get to the moon in Leo for you guys that are, wanting to hear about that. So please be patient. This is just a very interesting story to demonstrate the energy of Mars and Pluto, particularly if it's hitting something off very personal in your chart. So let me actually backtrack and say that if it's conjunct your sun, actually any of the personal planets, and certainly your ascendant. Of course, if it's your descendant, you will meet it in others more so. And then if it's on the midheaven, it corresponds to well, your career, your co-workers, etc. And if it's in the fourth, it's buried very deeply in the home, so it can bring up family themes and also your own internal unresolved anger, if you like, Mars issues. It is a very difficult planet. There's no two ways about it. You can't make Mars Venus. You just simply can't. So with Mars, we have to learn how to tap into that energy and work with it in a personal way that ultimately can be healthy and productive in some kind of way, because the tendency is for it to aggravate and irritate, the energy in the body, the energy in the psyche. And certainly with everything that's going on in the world, how can you not be fucking irritated, right? I get it. But we're talking about when people are very, very unconscious, this energy very much gets projected. Um, Also, you can, if you have more awareness, you tend to see it more around you. Now, I'll give you the example of what happened to me. And it's not a good story, unfortunately, but shit happens. That's life. I'm alive, and we move on, right? We get on with it. But basically, I went to this festival, my favorite DJ ever. I saw him last year, and I had the best time of my life. Like, literally, I was on a high for about 3 months after that event. It was just so fantastic. This year, it was a totally different organization that hired him, an organization that I was not familiar with. Long story short, there was 25,000 people at this event, and it was one of the worst days of my life, right? And there's multiple reasons. I can give you so many stories of what happened throughout that whole day, because it started at midday and it finished at about 11 p.m. Now, I got there at about 4 p.m. So what I noticed, because on that particular day there was a Sun, Mars, Pluto alignment, as there is right now as I speak as well. And I knew instinctively, I knew that that wasn't going to be the best energy for that type of event, even though it's in Aquarius, which is humanity, which is people, which is groups of people. And there were large groups of people, 25K people. Okay. And because we're in the peak of summer right here, it was fucking boiling hot. It was about 45 degrees that day. Now, in the Northern Hemisphere, you guys use a different way to measure it. Basically, it's about 100, okay, when you're talking about Northern Hemisphere. So extreme hot weather. So naturally, that does irritate, people for sure. So, I mean, I'm usually, when I'm a hermit and then I'm a social butterfly. I go into both zones. So introvert and extrovert, I'm equally both. But when I go to an event like this, I'm usually very, very social. And I sat there for 4 hours. Actually, it was about 5 hours, and just really didn't move. I just sat there and just observed everything because I could feel the energy was not good. Um, it was very, very aggressive, to use a more descriptive word. There was a lot of energy for sure because Mars is energy, but there was a lot of this undertone of aggressive type of energy all around, and I didn't like it at all. But I was just waiting for my guy to come on because he was the second last person to play for this event, so I had to wait quite a few hours. Now, fast forward, somebody spiked my drink. Yes, again, this has happened to me in 2025. That happened to me three times. So it's happened to me once now, the beginning of 2026. Again, uh, there's just a lot of predators around, unfortunately. Now, long story short, as I'm watching the guy that I wanted to watch, I suddenly felt myself pretty much pass out, right? Whatever this thing was, it knocked me out. And there was one particular person in this crowd because I was right up the front of the stage. And fortunately, this guy kept on coming up to me and just keeping an eye on me. He was like a little angel. But fast forward, I ended up in the first aid tent because I literally couldn't fucking walk, right? It was pretty bad. And the first aid crew were actually really aggressive as well. Um, I'm cutting it short. I ended up leaving the first aid tent. I just rested there for a little while till I kind of, got my bearings. And then I'm walking around, it's complete darkness because it was at an outdoor event in this massive kind of like a football oval, if you like, right? And they didn't have lights everywhere. So it's really pitch black dark. And I'm in an area that I'm totally unfamiliar with. And I'm trying to find how I'm going to get a cab and basically get the fuck out of there and get home safe, right? At this stage, I can still not completely, like I wasn't 100% still, but I still had my bearings enough to know what was going on. So I'm just sitting on the grass, like on the side, and I'm like just taking a breath, so to speak, trying to figure out in my head which way to go and how to get out of there. And some guy came up to me, dark-skinned guy, who was a complete predator. And I can tell you now, if I wasn't the sort of person I am, and if this was some young girl, he probably would have raped her, right? This is how dark and intense the energy was. So that whole day for me was a camp of vampires. And I posted about it on Facebook and I got severely attacked by so many people, which I was expecting. I'm just sharing this example, which is not a pleasant experience, of course, but thank God I'm okay and I got out of there okay, etc. But there was just so many moments of aggression and predator, energy lurking around everywhere. I met these two. I jumped on a train and I met this couple, and they were pretty sweet actually. And I hung out with them. We went to an after party where I thought my guy was going to be playing, but unfortunately he wasn't. It was just you know, um, a big scam like that entire event was, I think, because we paid for VIP tickets and we didn't get anything extra than your general admission. So it was all bullshit, basically. So we get to this, and I'm going to finish this story here. We get to this next venue, and just another example of Mars energy. Now, bear in mind, I've got this transit, Mars, Pluto, Sun is right on my ascendant, right, as all this is happening. So because I'm not expressing that energy myself in that moment, that is, I'm not being aggressive and I'm not, getting ready to punch on or whatever the fuck, right? I'm seeing that energy all around me, literally. So some people wouldn't have had such an intense energy, is the distinction I'm trying to make here. But because it was right on my ascendant, I could just see Mars, Pluto, just all around me. So we go to this venue and I walk up to the bar and there's no one at this bar. It's just a tiny little bar in this section in this venue. No one's there. So I'm not, blocking anybody or anything. So I order a drink and the bar guy literally says to me, once he gives me my drink and I'm standing there, I put my handbag on the bar. He looks at me and he goes, pick up your fucking bag and get the fuck away from the bar. So this is another Mars example, of anger. Like this person, I'm sure when he thought about that, he would have thought, well, what the fuck am I actually doing speaking to this woman like this? So I looked at him and I said, you've got serious mental health issues, mate. You better go and fucking get them checked out. And I just walked off. Now, I kid you not, half an hour later, I went to another bar. Exactly the same thing happened, but this time it was by a female. She said the exact same thing to me. This is Mars, 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 malefic, aggressive, people out of touch with their own anger, with their own what Mars issues, right? And so the only thing that they can do is unconsciously just project it, not even realize that their own behavior. This is called lack of awareness. So this energy is very, very strong, in so many ways. Now, I've just given you a personal example, which in one way is like nothing compared to what's going on in the world. I totally understand that. But it is a personal example that really highlights and demonstrates this energy down to a fucking T, basically. And so when I eventually got home, it took me 3 days to recover from that vampire camp and that energy of those people and everyone around me. And of course, the poison that that person put into my drink, I'm just very lucky that they didn't put, a really high dose where it could have knocked me unconscious. I could have died. Anything could have happened. It's so fucking dangerous out there. Unfortunately, you know, not everything is terrible and bad, I acknowledge that. There's a lot of great things happening, but there are a lot of dangerous positions you can be in without wanting it, without looking for it, without thinking about it, just simply because of the alignment of the energies. Now, I was really placid that night. I was so cautious. I mean, I literally sat there for 5 fucking hours doing nothing because I was observing the crowd and I could see the energy and it just wasn't right. It was really off. And I want to add to that, Venus is still invisible. Now, Venus is the planet that brings in peace, love, joy, happiness, connection. There was none of that present. And I had, very strong reservations about going to this event because I bought the tickets a couple of months ago and I knew Venus was going to be invisible. And I was really gutted about that because I knew it was going to have an impact. I knew it was going to be so obvious that Venus is just not there. And it's such a terrific example to demonstrate, the absence of the goddess of love, right? And happiness and peace. She's in the underworld still. She's not around. Take a look at what's happening in Minneapolis, in the USA, in so many different places. I was just reading that in Greece this morning. 6 young people died on their way to a football match. A very high profile football game was going to take place in Greece. This was a car crash. And Mars actually rules accidents as well. So, when I suspect these particular individuals, that Mars Pluto was hitting off something very strongly in their own chart, and they're guys as well. So it's a masculine energy. When when we are not in touch with our own Mars, it can be projected unconsciously, 100%, and we can attract all sorts of situations. Um, and also, it can, it very typically does correspond to accidents as well. There's a place in Greece called Thessalonica, where there's a serial killer at the moment, killed 2 females. This was news this morning. So, this is Mars Pluto energy, completely out of fucking control. Now, yesterday, I'm getting to the full moon, don't worry. Yesterday there was a Mars Pluto conjunction, and I just want to address that because I made a post about it on Facebook, and there were so many people that really wanted to understand what that means for them. However, I can't address everyone's questions. There was, like, I don't know, just, multiple people saying, oh, I've got it on my this, I've got it on my that, I've got it on my this, I've got that. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? And I want to say to those people, you get so much, right? Um, there's like a decent amount of good quality astrologers online that really do give their time freely, and really give quite a lot. And I'm one of those people. And I want to say to you that those of you that are really interested in astrology and in learning and, in understanding what's going on better for you, just think about maybe, approaching an astrologer and saying, "Hey, I'd like to have a session with you," instead of being whatever it is you are and just, wanting to just free grab all the time. Support people, support the artists. We're all artists. Us astrologers are artists. We just live moment to moment. Pretty much all of us, we live moment to moment, day by day. That's a choice we make, sure. But, hey, support us, just like we support you with all the free content that we give. That's just a little side note. Now, I will make some comments about the Mars-Pluto conjunction because it's a new phase conjunction, meaning that Mars and Pluto came together yesterday at the exact degree, minute, what is it? Degree, hour, and minute and second. Like uh, in order for a new phase conjunction to occur, both bodies need to be at the exact same time, right? With degrees and minutes and seconds, basically. And this is what happened with Mars and Pluto. So a new phase conjunction means that there is a new cycle being born, right? There is some new seed that's being planted. That's the first point. The second point is that it is Mars and Pluto that's involved. So Mars is the faster moving body. It's going to move away from Pluto, right? That's the faster moving body. And because it's a new phase conjunction and Mars has a 2 year cycle, you can look at it in the context of you're planting seeds, giving birth to a new cycle relative to everything that Mars and Pluto corresponds to. And you will see this cycle unfold really over a 2 year period, right? You can look at it in a shorter term as well, but you can look at it in a longer context because Mars has a 2 year return cycle, right? In 2 years' time, Mars will conjunct Pluto again at some point. It'll be at a different degrees and so forth. Don't know if it'll be exact new phase conjunction. I haven't looked that far ahead. Point is, we are where we are right now, which is new phase conjunction between Mars and Pluto. Now, these are the two planets that correspond to power. They're power symbols. They're very much power, energy, strength. Um, of course, the power can be misused, misguided, and abused as well. On a positive level, this can be, the ultimate force and energy to really put your drive and initiative and willpower into something that you really want, whatever it is. Now, of course, you need to consider where it is happening in your chart, right? If it's happening on an angle, that's super big. If it's conjunct one of your personal planets, that's super big. If it's across the nodal axis, that's also highly significant. Then, of course, you've got the houses involved. What house is it in, etc. So that's why it's never easy to answer people's questions in such a simple black and white manner. When you're looking at something like this that's happening in your chart, you need to look at a whole bunch of other factors to create some type of synthesis, which is the artistry of a person who reads the sky. Okay. But simply put, this new phase conjunction between Mars and Pluto is a complete fucking powerhouse. And what you do with it is going to be, directly your responsibility. And I say responsibility because Mars can be very, it's because it has the tendency to be, it's quite an egocentric planet, if you like. It's quite a me type of energy. Um, Now, in certain situations, that can be, highly crucial when it comes to defending yourself, or defending others or protecting yourself, asserting yourself, having the confidence to be really direct and assertive. Some people are not naturally like that. So this energy can be very helpful for things like that. But at the other end of the spectrum, this is very, very pushy type of energy, and it can push people's fucking buttons. So you've got to be really aware of what you are doing with this energy. Now, when the conjunction occurred, which was yesterday, this part of the seeding process, you don't know what's going to come exactly. You might have some intentions, you might have some thoughts around it, relative to where it is, what it's aspecting, which house it is in, what you want to do with it, etc. And you can intend all of that, and of course that will help. But my point is, a new phase conjunction is like a new moon, okay? We don't know exactly what that new moon is going to bring until we actually watch that cycle unfold, pretty much over a month. We might have, again, some ideas, some hypotheses, some, possibilities, some desires and intentions. It doesn't always work out exactly as we want it, and it doesn't always work out exactly as we thought. And we have to be honest about that, because there is this element to life called mystery and the unknown. It doesn't matter if it's a new moon and you understand the symbolism to a new moon. There's always an element of the unknown, right? And that includes your own unconscious and what that is ready to perhaps meet or bring up or activate within you as well. But a Mars-Pluto conjunction is extremely powerful to exercise your willpower, your assertion, your drive, your strength towards something that's really important to you, a particular goal, let's say. Of course, that comes back to all the other factors that I mentioned. That is, what is it aspecting in your chart? Which house is it in, etc. And what the hell else is going on in your chart as well. But it is a cycle that will unfold, over the next 2 years. The conjunction occurred yesterday. What's going to happen is Mars is going to move around. Eventually, it's going to, oppose Pluto. It's going to make other aspects before that, but eventually it'll come to the opposition. The opposition part is a very important point. It's basically the full moon, the full moon that I'm about to speak to in a moment. That's Mars opposite Pluto is like the full moon. That's the full phase of the conjunction of where it started. So the best we can do with this type of energy is really focus at something very productive, um, goal orientated, very clear and conscious as much as we can be, and very aware that we're not, projecting it left, right, and center, so to speak. This projection thing of Mars, Pluto, Sun energy in Aquarius, it's really out of hand at the moment. Pluto in Aquarius was always going to be a problem because it is highlighting, it's putting the spotlight on groups of people and humanity, at large in terms of what's unconscious in people, right? And so these systems, they've kind of piled all these things in motion that has just created, it was inevitable, it was going to create, anger and division and prejudices and personal opinions, and this is right and this is wrong, and, whatever, right? It was always going to be that. And that's where we have our own, sort of free will, if you like, and we have our own responsibility to choose how we're going to, sort of tune into this Pluto in Aquarius as well. Are we going to allow it to create this hatred and violence and anger, towards our brothers and sisters, right? Because of these very complex, layered, and difficult things that, yes, are put into motion deliberately. We have to find solutions. Now, the backstory of this, of course, is also, Pluto in Aquarius out of bounds in the southern declination, which is all about revolutions and freedom, and people are wanting freedom, and we're not really seeing a lot of freedom at this point. We're seeing more sort of catastrophic type of events and people sort of turning against each other. And that just shows you how conditioned, programmed, and unconscious people are. Because if that were not true, then people would actually not be doing what they are doing collectively, right, in these different groups. It just shows you how fucking unconscious humanity still is, unfortunately. Okay, I'm going to bring up a chart now for the full moon. Um, so yeah, this is all I'll bring up the chart just for today. So here's the Mars Pluto. Now yesterday, Mars was at 3 degrees. Okay. So the conjunction between Mars and Pluto occurred at 3 degrees of Aquarius. I read the Sambian symbol for 4 degrees of Aquarius, and it's quite a positive symbol. But how many people are going to, tune into that is another story. So I guess, even at this point, relative to this moment right now, which is the 29th for me, the 28th for most of you, over in the Northern Hemisphere, it depends where you are. This energy is still very palpable. It's extremely intense. And I'm sure you've noticed it all around you, at a very at a not so extreme level, it's mainly irritation. People are just agitated and irritated and bothered by things, and people's moods are just very agitated with this energy. extremely strong, this energy. I can't emphasize enough how strong this energy is and how careful we have to be with wherever we are and whatever choices we are making. The only way you can avoid this is to stay away from humanity and the outside world. Then you might find yourself just sitting with your own Pluto, Mars issues anyway, which is not a bad thing because you might be able to address some of it. Address what? Address what the fuck you're pissed off about? Let it out. Let the steam out. This is a good thing to do. It's just not a good thing to do to put it onto somebody else, right? They become the hook for your anger, for your unconscious stuff. This is what happens. This is what's happening collectively, on so many fucking levels. I don't even know where to begin. I remember I just want to go back to one thing because this is fucking hilarious and it really does describe this energy. And it's just such a funny example. When I was sitting before I got up to go and watch my guy play, there was this couple next to me and they must have had the best ecstasy ever. They all they did was they were just sitting on each other and they were just goo goo gaga eyed for about 4 hours and just pashing, just kissing, right? And just telling each other how much they loved each other. It was quite adorable. That was the only sweet thing that I actually saw in that whole event of 25,000 people. They obviously had the good stuff. Anyway, at one stage they got up and because they did engage with me a little bit, the girl particularly. And she was just giving me some compliments, actually. She was quite sweet. So I gave them back to her. And at one stage, they got up and I go, where are you guys going? And they said, we are going in. What they meant by that was they took them 5 hours to prepare themselves. Sorry, I just need to, someone's just decided to have a little party, which is great. Um, What they meant by that was, they took them 5 hours, right? Going through their whatever. And what they were referring to was they're getting ready, first of all, to face that fucking 45 degrees heat because there was no cover. At this point, we were sitting under this little tent, all squashed. There was a couple of hundred of us there, all just squashed. And all these other people were sort of kind of all over the place. And then there was in the center, there was at the front was the stage, and then there's this entire like football field, no cover in 45 degrees heat. And the organizers were throwing fucking fire flames off the stage into the crowd. That's how retarded, some people are. What can I say? So, that's what it felt like. You had to prepare yourself to get up and get ready for the fucking heat, the chaos, and the madness that was going on in that center section. And that's kind of how life feels at the moment. It's like, okay, I'm going in. Just fucking made me laugh because it really reminded me of what the world stage is like at the moment. You've got to really kind of, put your armor on, put your gear on, get ready, and okay, let's fucking go, right? That's really how most things feel at the moment, especially under a Mars, Pluto, Sun, three masculine energies all lined up together. It's the Mars Pluto primarily that can be the problem. And that is, it's shown itself. There's you can't debate that, you can't argue that, even if you are sitting in some oasis or in some fucking fantasy land and tripping out and whatever. That might be your experience, sure, but you cannot deny the reality of what's going on, right? Left, right, and center. Okay, so if you look at this chart here as well, you can see that there's a beautiful Mercury-Venus conjunction, which is occurring today. And it's been building up. So Mercury's been building his way up towards Venus. They are both evening stars here. Okay, Venus is still invisible though, but this is a really beautiful energy for creative writing, for love letters, for music, lyrics, anything creative that brings in language, words, writing, speaking, singing, and so forth, right? So if you're a creative person, this is an amazing energy to tap into. Amazing. And, this is where, as I said, both Mercury and Venus are evening stars. And Mercury is an evening star, is Hermes, who has the bigger picture, basically, and really, expands on what was started when Mercury was Apollo, the morning star. So the seeds from God come into Apollo when he's a morning star. And then when he's an evening star, it all just kind of starts to take form and shape and expands out. So it's a really beautiful energy. And Venus, as the evening star, is Aphrodite, the goddess Aphrodite. She's not yet visible, but you can definitely tune into this energy and really set some very specific intentions with maybe some creative juice, creative intentions, creative projects that you may be involved in or want to start and so forth. Or it's just a great time to sit down and fucking read your favorite book, right? It's the goddess of love with Mercury. It's a very beautiful energy. I want to say this though, as a side note, Mercury Venus conjunctions in some of the descriptions in medieval astrology do point out that a person with Mercury Venus aspect can be quite devious with their thoughts. Okay. So just side note that point because you might be in a dialogue with somebody who's, sweet talking you, but has a very, different agenda to what you think. You always got to be aware of these things. But overall, a Mercury Venus aspect is just more about love energy, especially while Venus is a evening star, which is the love goddess Aphrodite. Now, when the new moon comes up, and I was going to talk about Neptune going into Aries, but it is really, really hot here, and I'm really struggling with this heat, to be honest. And I don't want to do a 2-hour video, so I'll just bracket that for the moment. But um, well, actually, let me just touch on it quickly. So Neptune, entered Aries a couple of days ago, right? Uh, Finally, finished the Pisces zone. Some of you saw me write a little post on the community section. It was pretty kind of direct, which is my nature anyway, for the most part, as I am an Aries. And I don't really hold back, but I do have enough of a very strong Venus to also be very diplomatic, empathetic, and considerate as well. But at the same time, I will call out bullshit if I see it. I wouldn't be fearful of speaking my mind for fear of being judged or not being liked. I've been copying that kind of shit my whole life. And if I had allowed that fear to be a reality, that is to be scared to express myself in whatever way that is, whether it's the way I dress, whether it's the way I talk, whether it's whatever I do, if I was not able to be myself, right, and just express that, well, I might as well live in a fucking prison. And I refuse to live in a prison that somebody has created because of their perspective of me and a sense of either my own insecurity or fear of not being liked or judged because what I do or what I say doesn't fucking work for Jack or Jill, right? And so I just stop myself from being myself so that they can be happy. I mean, what a ludicrous fucking idea. It does come out of Libra, unfortunately. That's the shallow side of Libra, that Libra itself can fall into the trap, of needing to please all the time. Okay, we've got to go aircon. It's just too much. Um, so the reason I'm bringing these examples up is because Neptune in Aries, guys, this smoke and mirror delusion that people have been fucking hiding behind the last 14 years is fucking over. Neptune in Aries is going to be the most bizarre fucking experience, the most bizarre. They are two energies that have absolutely nothing in common. That I think that Saturn actually forming the conjunction to Neptune really actually is a fucking saving grace, to be honest with you. There's going to be some challenging things about it for sure. But overall, it's a saving grace because Neptune on its own in Aries, if that's hitting off one of your personal planets or one of your personal angles, even though it's in Aries, that's not an easy energy. You need to break it down and think about it. What rules Aries? Mars. Have you noticed what happens when there's a Mars-Neptune conjunction? Now, this is a similar type of scenario. Neptune in Aries, it's Mars-Neptune energy. There can be a lot of deception through that kind of conjunction. I've seen it over and over and over and over through the years. In esoteric astrology, Mars-Neptune, that combination, they're the rulers of ray number 6, which does bring up the whole religious, fanatical, part of life, right? It's that desire to want to sacrifice, right? At a really unconscious level, it's the distorted kind of fanatics that have this view that no, it's only this particular belief system that is right. Everybody else is going to hell. Now we know that that is a distorted perspective, but that's what Mars Neptune can bring up in terms of it being connected to ray number 6 in esoteric astrology. It would require a very, very conscious and self-aware individual to use that energy in the way God intends for us, which is, yes, to give, to maybe to sacrifice, yes, to give service, to give back, right? That's part of that energy as well. But most people are going to probably, take it upon themselves. I'm talking about at the unconscious level, right? To use it in a way where, Aries can be very fucking selfish and very self-centered at the worst end of the scale, very unaware of others, that's just the nature of Aries in a very unconscious way. But it is a very instinctual sign as well, so very sharp instincts, right? It is also the spark of life. Literally, Aries is the ignition spark of life. It's that pure fire in its purest form. But at an unintegrated, unconscious level, place somebody in a camp over here where they're told this is the only truth and there is no other way, that Mars Neptune becomes, the martyr, the victim, and so forth. So, these themes need to be understood and considered for Neptune in Aries alone. Now, there are lots of other good things that can come out of this for us, but just remember, Neptune ultimately is about the bigger picture or the ultimate source creation to all things and everything. And it is about sacrifice. It's not about our own personal fucking gain. Mars is about personal gain, not Neptune. So Neptune in Aries does imply that how we direct that energy, what we direct it towards, and what we do with it has to have an aspect to it. Not only an aspect, but has to be, you could say, the primary motivation really needs to be that we are sacrificing or doing something not just for ourselves, but for the betterment of everything and everyone. It's a big call. It's a big ask. And there's not a lot of fucking people that would do that. That's the truth. But this is what Neptune asks us. It's about surrendering and giving ourselves to the source and being a conduit and a vessel for that birth and that creation to come through. Aries. It involves sacrifice in some kind of way. And if people just try and use the Neptune Aries energy for pure selfish motivations, that's where things are going to go a little bit hairy for certain people. And you mark my words, you will see it. There will be famous people where this Neptune Aries hits something off in their chart. You'll see it in the financial market. It'll show up everywhere. I'll have a lot more to say about it. I just wanted to briefly touch on it because this is the beginning of a new era, Neptune in Aries. The last time this happened was, 165 years ago, not in our lifetime. And then, of course, in February, I'll get to the full moon in Leo, guys. Sorry for those. Many probably tuned out. I don't care. This is my style. This is just how I'm going to do it. I'm being very Aries about it right now. Everything's important. I don't feel I've said anything that wasn't relevant, even if it was from my own personal example to demonstrate, observation correlation. That's how you learn astrology. I can just, pick up a textbook and just read to you if you like, but how fucking boring would that be? That's not an astrologer. An astrologer is an artist who can synthesize. So, Neptune, we are at the absolute beginning of this new era, and I think the the massive deception and lies and disillusionment that a lot of people are still hanging on to, still clinging on to, can't let go, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, the Neptune in Pisces, um, that that smoke and mirrors stuff, that's all gone. This is going to be very, very raw energy, kind of in your face, if you like, Aries in your face. And there's going to be more of a directness of how people are actually, how they are integrating their spirituality, their spiritual self, their spiritual desires, their spiritual connections, what they are creating, what they are giving birth to. There's going to be a real directness about it. It's not going to be fucking smoke and mirrors anymore, Neptune in Pisces. I mean, there were some beautiful things about Neptune in Pisces, but there were a lot of things that were not so beautiful. That's a fact. So I say Saturn is a saving grace because Neptune itself is such a difficult planet. Saturn is going to be the one that is going to help us put form and structure, to our dreams and our ideals, of course. But just keep in mind that even these dreams and ideals that we have, yes, there'll be a part of them that are just something that we feel inside us, but it has to be for something bigger than ourselves as well. Ultimately, it has to be bigger than you. It can't just be about you. It can't just be about me. It's not how Neptune operates. So Saturn is going to really help in that way, right? To bring in some structure and some form and responsibility, around what we are creating, what we're giving birth to, because this is literally a new earth, a new era that's being built right now. And right now we're seeing, the worst end of it because of all this backstory of Mars, Pluto, Mars, and also Pluto out of bounds, southern declination, which does correspond to revolutions and humanity going, full force into smashing all the systems down. And of course, there's been, some incredible positive things that have happened out of, dismantling, um, certain systems that can no longer stand in their power, a false power that was used against groups or humanity or individuals for that matter. So that's going to continue. That stuff's not going to stop. And don't forget what was it? It was the new moon was, let me just think, it was in Capricorn, and it had let's just because this full moon, I flagged it during the new moon. Just bear with me because this is, just always got to look at things in the whole context. So, okay, there it is there. So Pluto was basically there with the new moon as well. And I do recall suggesting that this cycle was really not going to be very easy. A, because Saturn and Neptune both in Pisces. There's something about this cycle that's finishing something off. Pluto is there as well. And when we go 2 weeks later, which is, the present, let's say, or when the full moon will occur, we have the full moon in Leo. And, look, the closest aspect, apart from the sun being exactly opposite the moon, is actually Mars. Mars opposite the moon. And then, of course, Pluto's opposite the moon. Now that Neptune's in Aries, it's trining the moon, but that's a very wide trine. It's 13 degrees away. So the closest energies, and an opposition is a very strong aspect. It's the second strongest aspect. First is a conjunction, then it's an opposition in terms of the power and effect. So Mars and Pluto are opposite this full moon. Now, a full moon in Leo, generally speaking, if we're not living in a cataclysmic fucking shit show of a reality, moon in Leo is generally loads of fun, but we are living in what I just said for the most part when we look at the world out there. Now, in our own individual story and personal circumstances, we may just tune into this moon in Leo and, I suggest having a party, doing something really fun. You've got to kind of really watch this full moon, because that Mars Pluto opposition is, I have no doubt it's going to be a problem for a lot of people, or for a lot of groups of people, or for very specific situations on the planet. There's no fucking two ways about it. The Mars Pluto is one of the strongest fucking power aspects in the whole entire sky. Mars Pluto. There's nothing more powerful than that. But that power is very extreme. So it depends on whose hands is it in. I think there's going to be much more drama seen on the world stage. Drama is the sign that corresponds to Leo, or drama corresponds to Leo. And, look, there are a lot of fake videos that are made. I've seen a lot of videos actually on these ICE agents, in Minneapolis and various other places in the US. And I know that whole situation is very complex. And I know that there's also a couple of different camps, divisions, right, in terms of perspectives. Some are pro, some are, not for it, right? And so there's a lot of unfortunately there's extreme conflict because of that, right? And I think there's what I was going to say was, I think there's a lot of fake videos being made, because I'm seeing videos of normal civilians, if you like a fucking 60-year-old Mexican woman bashing an ICE agent, and it just looks so unrealistic to me. It doesn't look like a real event. So there's heaps of AI animation bullshit out there on so many fucking levels, and that's one of them for sure. And I don't know why people bother creating such retarded videos, because we don't need that. We don't need to agitate people more. We don't need to create more aggression. We need the fucking opposite. This is where Venus is still absent. She's not in the sky. She's absent, means peace, love, or the possibility and potentiality of that, the experience of that, the attunement to that is not accessible when Venus is invisible. That's why I did a whole workshop on it and talked about Venus, Inanna, descending into the underworld. It's so significant, guys. I just can't fucking tell you how significant it is. Now, Venus, incidentally, becomes visible in most latitudes, because it is based on latitude, meaning your location on Earth. But in most latitudes, she will appear on the 4th of February. That'll be her first appearance as an evening star, meaning you will see her just as the sun sets, she'll be right behind her. And so, of course, it depends on conditions, blah, 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 blah. The point is, however, she will start to be visible from around the 4th of Feb, which is 2 days after the full moon. So even at this full moon, she's still not visible. So I see this full moon as a real intense, fireball energy, Leo, over dramatized, over dramatic in so many ways, right? In people's experiences, particularly because Venus is absent and Mars and Pluto is opposite this full moon. So I think, and this full moon is part of the cycle that began with the new moon in Capricorn, conjunct Pluto. So this is, and Saturn is still in Pisces. This is still part of something that's being completed. When we have the new moon in Aquarius in 2 weeks' time, that's going to be a really significant hallmark of 2026 stepping into some type of fresh start. I don't think we're quite here yet at this point. It's also when the Chinese fire horse year kicks off too. But the true new year begins on the 21st of March in terms of the tropical zodiac. So I feel that this is connected to past stories still. You might have had situations that have been going on the last few months maybe, or the last week or the last month, whatever. That does, specifically connect to stories of connections with people, experiences in your life situation that is still very much linked to the past. And the full moon in Leo, it'll really highlight the fucking drama of that situation. Or you will be at home or at an event, maybe having the best time of your life. Because, Leo is about fun. And as much as it is, it can feel awkward to have fun in a world that is so cataclysmic at the moment. But at the same time, I think we've got to have a balance, You can't just sit there and focus on all the dark shit and all the negative shit and get wiped out from it, on every single level, psychically, emotionally, physically, and expect to be happy. And there's nothing wrong with being happy, even though there are, some people or a lot of people, going through hell in different ways. I think a lot of people have trouble with that. There's this guilt, that can come up for us, First of all, when you are happy and you are joyous and your heart is fucking radiating boom, 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 love vibration, even if someone is going through a terrible time, that's going to uplift them. That's not going to take them down. That's going to inject them with good energy, with energy that can uplift them. So there's absolutely fucking nothing wrong with experiencing some happiness, But I keep coming back to Venus is still invisible, and really the closest aspect is Mars Pluto. So I see this, the moon is our moods. The full moon highlights and puts the spotlight on everything that's going on, personally and out there on the arena, the fucking circus of this reality at the moment. Leo is a sign of drama. Pluto and Mars are archetypes that correspond to aggression and violence. So I expect that there's going to be some pretty dramatic things that really light up during this time. At best, we can either lay low, be very conscious of our own actions and behaviors, and just check in on ourselves and try and have some fucking fun. But I don't think it's going to be a super fun full moon in Leo like it could be if it wasn't opposite that Pluto Mars energy. Long story short. Uh, what else did I want to say about this? Was there anything else? And Mars is still invisible, yeah. Mars is still invisible. It's going to be reborn as a morning star. Well, it's going to become visible as a morning star. Um, Still got few months left before that happens. I think it's May or June. So Mars is still kicking on in the underworld, you know. And Venus is about to leave him. In 2 days' time after the full moon, she says bye-bye to him and she rises from the underworld, reborn as Aphrodite. And that is going to be a saving grace for all of us, really, for the rest of this year, or up until I think it's October. She goes retrograde in Scorpio, and that's a really big deal, because I think that's her last time in Scorpio, basically for the next, 120 years. So Venus is going through some pretty significant transitions herself. But anyway, in the short term, given that she's been reborn as the evening star, makes her appearance on the 4th of February, she will be seen in the sky for several months, for most of the rest of this year, as the goddess Aphrodite, which is about love and peace. And it is the creative aspect of Venus that really comes in. I think this vibration will help, because the opposite to that is the morning star, Venus, who is Pallas Athena, who's the goddess of fucking war. That's what we've had the last 9 months. We've had Pallas Athena on board, doing her thing, shooting her fucking spears where she's needed to. Now we've got a much softer energy coming in, and we really, 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 really need it. And honestly, that event that I went to on Saturday, so obvious that Venus was just nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be seen. I've frankly never seen such a vile crowd of 25,000 people. It's a harsh statement, I know, but it really was this Mars Pluto angry energy with no Venus, no love. So that's that really, honestly, that's the highlight. That Venus is going to appear in the sky 2 days after this full moon, and that we are starting a new era. We still don't know exactly how it's going to take shape and form. When Saturn comes together with Neptune, again, well, it's not a new phase conjunction because they're not exact to the minute, I don't think, or are they? I need to double check that. Well, it probably is a new phase conjunction, actually. So we don't know what that Saturn Neptune in Aries is going to be exactly. We can speculate. Look, I'm going to come back and speak to the Saturn Neptune in Aries, just that alone, because that's a very, very, very highly crucial pattern that we really need to pay attention to, and we've just got to be really in touch with our instincts, which Aries gives us every opportunity to be in touch with that. But it's not just about being in touch with our instincts, it's also about having awareness as well. Or, that energy can be very misguided. So full moon in Leo, yeah, I do wish you a good time wherever you are. I hope it highlights some nice things for you. I'm sure it's not going to for a lot of people, to be quite honest. Um, but whatever it shows you, let it be a process of growth of some kind, let it teach you. That's what life does. It just teaches us, doesn't it? That's why we're here. And just know that Venus is showing up 2 days after that full moon. So that's a real celebratory period right there, just rejoicing because she's been in the underworld for at that point, it'll be like about 2 months. No Venus in the sky, no Venus anywhere. She's died, been going through this death process, and she's just about to reappear, so she's bringing in her rebirth self, which is the Aphrodite goddess. The evening star is Aphrodite, and it is love and peace. And that's, if we could summarize it into what does the world need, we could just use those two words, love and peace, couldn't we? We could just love and peace, man. We could just say that. Well, Venus evening star is exactly that. So I'm not saying it's going to stop, everything, all the chaos, because it can't. It's just not possible, but it will soften and bring in different experiences for us individually. So look at where she appears in your birth chart as well. That part of the chart is going to be very, very important. All right. I said I wasn't going to speak this long, but I have. And yeah, that's where it's at in terms of my understanding and my perspective. I hope it helps you. I hope you resonate. I hope you're well. I'm sending you all much love, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter anything. Just keep dancing. Peace.